Hey, welcome back, friends. I know we had a brief hiatus last week because my partner was busy, and we'll get into that a little bit later in the program. But Conquering Heroes, just to let you know what's going on with MGoBlue Podcasts. This week, I'm going to have head coach of the women's lacrosse team, Hannah Nielsen. So that'll come out on Thursday, and there's been a lot going on in Michigan athletics. Softball is off to a great start. Baseball off to a great start. And we'll try and catch up with as many of the programs as possible. But right now I want to bring in my partner, and that is Mr. Brian Bush.
Yeah, Matt Bow we had on Conquering Heroes, championship for the women over the weekend. Great for them as well. And yeah, the Michigan-Purdue game. I know Duke didn't go the way that Michigan fans wanted, but boy, in the Jansen household, I know Michigan over Purdue is an important one, and mission accomplished.
It is 1-for-1, and now that trip to Champaign is, and I know there might not be as much riding on it as
there will.
I know that there will be, but the Big Ten could be locked up before you actually take that trip down to Champaign.
Well, a share could, and if you're listening on the audio side, you probably already know about that. But as Dusty May said, and I'm paraphrasing, no one in that locker room wants to share anything. And Michigan would like to take care of business in Champaign. We'll talk more basketball on the video-only portion. But let's, John, get into our 7 from 77. Been a couple of weeks since we did one of these. So, hey, spring ball, less than 3 weeks away. What's the latest you've noticed around Schembechler Hall as we prepare for March 17th in the Wolverines' first practice?
Well, the big thing right now is, the winter conditioning program has been going on, and these guys, there are a lot of energy in the weight room. That's been really good, and the participation, obviously, it's voluntary, but it's not voluntary. But when you want to have guys buy in, and they've bought in hook, line, and sinker. Some of that is a fresh voice, a fresh program. Not that there's huge changes, but the other thing is, these coaches are all going to be talking to the strength and conditioning coach. Everyone wants to make a great first impression. So there is a lot of attention to detail, which will translate as I've always talked about. Attention to detail is what separates, the average teams to being good teams to being great. And greatness is obviously the pursuit. So the attention to detail right now, whether it's, in the running drills, and they're doing a lot of the combine drills right now as all of the major programs do to prepare guys throughout the course of their career. If they get the opportunity to go to the combine, they're ready for it. And so you're seeing a lot of attention to detail. And it's also, there's an itchiness to get on the field because, again, they want to prove to their new coaching staff, and the only carryover is Coach Alford, who we had on last week. Everyone else is brand new. So it's all going to be about first impressions. What have I been able to learn? How can I process that? How can I continue to make improvements? And these guys have done a great job of getting with their coaches, assistant coaches, GAs, anybody that they can to soak up as much of the offense and defense as possible so that they can hit the ground running and they don't have to try and learn on the first day and then go out there and perform. So there's been a lot of work in the classroom, in the video room, on the field. And it's going to be fun to watch this team finally be able to put the pads back on and see what the new look is actually going to look like.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. Not only we know that the coaching staff, the players will learn a great deal over spring ball. I'm fascinated to know just how revealing, how much we'll hear from Coach Whittingham, from the position coaches. We will get them, right? We'll have them on the podcast. I'll do media availability. But just how open will they be about sharing who's thriving? I'm not expecting we're going to get the too deep unveiled by any stretch of the imagination, but will there be opportunities, and will these coaches take advantage of saying, yeah, hey, so-and-so is really emerging? It's going to be as blank of a canvas going in as possible. So really any information I think you have to take as a legitimate drumbeat.
Well, a lot of the coaches, and every coach is going to have their own style. Every assistant coach is going to have their own style. One of the things that I remember is, a coach mentioning you in any form, whether it's on social media, it's in a news article, it's on a podcast, like all of those mentions you soak it up, and everybody says, oh, I don't listen to anything. Well, you certainly pay attention to what your coach is talking about. And if he mentions your name as doing something good, that's an encouragement. And coaches will specifically mention guys like that as a motivating factor to do more and to get more out of them, to keep on pushing, and especially encourage them if they're doing something well. And on the flip side, if I think going into spring ball, I should be, in first string, second string, third string, but he's talking about another guy. Now, all of a sudden, it kicks my ass in gear and say, this is what I've got to hit, X, Y, and Z I've got to do, because I'm seeing the first guy, the guy that he's talking about, do this. So I need to up my game. And that competition and will drive this team to be even better. And it'll raise the level of play in the depth chart, even if you're not ultimately the guy that's starting on Saturdays in the fall. You want to make sure that your name is at the top of the list. So in the rotation, or if somebody goes down, you're next man in.
All right, number 2 on our 7 from 77, Michigan has found its replacement for the NFL-bound Lou Esposito on the defensive coaching staff. Larry Black is the new defensive tackle coach. Last 4 seasons, Black was at Vanderbilt, which has been one of the most emerging programs in college football over those stretches of seasons. He was working there with the defensive line. This past season, picked up an additional title of defensive run game coordinator. Commodores finished 18th in the country in rush yards allowed per game. Your thoughts? Any prior knowledge of Larry Black?
Well, I'm gonna start with a quiz, because his first coaching experience was at Carthage College, and I want to know if Brian Bush knows, first of all, what state and what city Carthage College is in.
Is it Carthage, Texas?
No, not even close.
No? My original guess before you said state was, is it in England?
Yeah. It does very much sound like it would be in England.
You would not have said anything about state. I would have been like, maybe that's over there in Europe. But
yeah, it's a stone's throw from Cambridge. No, it's in Kenosha, Wisconsin. And so that's where Coach Black started his coaching career. And obviously you went through the list of he was at Notre Dame, he was at Toledo, and he's coming through us from Vanderbilt. So, he has coached some high-level competition, some high-level players. And what I'm more concerned about, what he was able to do at Notre Dame. And honestly, Toledo has put out, if you're a defensive back, they've put out a number of defensive backs into the NFL. But then at Vanderbilt, the surgence, I don't want to even say resurgence. It was the surgence of the Commodores that kind of took everybody by surprise. And, everybody was looking at their quarterback and their offense, but the defense may have been the best part of that team. And that defensive front, obviously with the linebackers, being able to stop the run in the SEC, that's a big deal. And so, he's bringing some experience, obviously, from Notre Dame and Vanderbilt in terms of playing against high-level talent as well, putting together game plans and developing players. What I don't know, because I haven't even had a chance to meet him yet, in the brief time that he's been here, is what's his coaching style and how does he develop players? And that's really going to be what I'm looking at during spring ball, is how is he coaching these defensive tackles? And we've talked about it, and we heard it from Coach Jay Hill. Defensive tackles could be a very special part of this defense, and they may, in fact, and he made this proclamation, and I would back him up on it. They may have the best pair of defensive tackles in college football. So it's not necessarily about developing guys to a level where they can be really good, but how can he develop them in regards to, and I talk about this all the time on both sides of the line of scrimmage, using their hands. How can they shed blocks? How can they, jar those offensive linemen, and to create either penetration or to create an opportunity where they can shed a block and disrupt things in the backfield. And it's not always when you're playing against teams that pull a lot or they use in motions. If you can put that offensive lineman, those centers or guards, foot their feet, 1 yard into the backfield, or even make a step back, now all of a sudden it disrupts everything. And I want to see how he's coaching some of those things. And we know that he's been able to do it because of what he did at Vanderbilt and what we saw him do at Notre Dame. I just want to see him do it here at Michigan.
Yeah, we talked about just how effusive in praise Jay Hill was about that defensive line. Larry Black will get to work with those guys sooner rather than later. It's always so funny. We'll get it with Koy Detmer Jr., our guest, on the audio version. You talk and you ask about these coaches. Hey, what's it like to be in Ann Arbor? And in their first month, it's like, I've literally only seen the place I'm staying. Sometimes it's a hotel and the building, but boy, the drive is great.
Yeah. Boy, hey, I'm none of the guys that are coming from Utah, they don't have to master driving in snow. Obviously, they've done that before. But maybe one of the questions I need to ask them is how are you acclimating yourself to Michigan drivers? Because we drive with a different tempo and a different expectation than most drive in the country.
Yeah, no, it's but I think that's a pretty common thread. I hear that everywhere I've moved to, but I do think Michigan's got a special place in that. So congrats to us. All right, number 3 on our 7 from 77. Not made official yet, but plenty of reports have stated that Dave Peliquin, who was recently with Athletes First, a football agency, but spent 21 years on Notre Dame's staff before that. He will be the Wolverines' new general manager again, as reported. If this does get to the finish line and it comes out as official, takeaways from the hire and the areas of focus, how have you seen that general manager role evolve here in the NIL era?
Well, shoot. I mean, just the fact that we have a general manager in college football is evolution at its finest. And that's a unique position because you've got recruiting involved. So it's identifying talent at the high school level. You got the transfer portal, so it's identifying and speaking with the coaching staff about, hey, what are our needs every single year? And then already having guys in mind and evaluating those guys so that, hey, when day one hits, they're in Ann Arbor versus anywhere else in the country. So it's, excuse me, it's a very unique position. And then the whole money aspect on top of it. So I love the fact that he's coming from an agency. So he's got the players side and that version, but he's also got the player side and the university side and the athletic department side of what it takes to put all these moving pieces together. And here's what else I like is as we continue to travel down this road, and this is probably something you haven't heard a lot of people talk about. I don't think this model is sustainable, but when you've got a guy that's been in college football for over 20 years and has seen all of these changes, has grown with these changes, has adapted to these changes, and also been on the other side in regards to, being an agent for whether it's college players, pro players, doesn't matter, but it's a representative side. Now, all of a sudden, Michigan should have a voice in how college football looks like and what the business side of it is moving forward. And he's going to be a very respected voice in that. And so that's just another aspect that I don't think a lot of people have talked about as we continue to move forward with the new era of college, the business of college sports. But I think he is a respected name. He's a respected voice. And he's going to be a guy that I think does really well for Michigan in all the aspects that it takes to be a general manager, because it's a very unique position where you're evaluating sometimes 14-year-olds and you're, in terms of, future prospects to recruit, but you're also evaluating 21, 22, 23-year-olds. And I mean, that's a decade's worth of difference in there. And you've got to be able to identify different traits, different things at different times as we continue to figure out this whole era of football.
Yeah, you must make a hire who has a pulse on the current and an ability to adapt to whatever will change. It's not a matter of if things will adjust and be altered and be drastically overhauled, but it's just a matter of when in that reality. All right, we'll continue our 7 from 77 here after we talk about our presenting sponsor, Meijer, also the presenting sponsor of the 2025 and 2026 Michigan football seasons and hundreds of sports teams across the Midwest.
Yeah, and Meijer wants to know, with your help, we can provide meals to our hungry neighbors through Simply Give. With just $10, you can provide meals to local pantries serving families in need. All you have to do is look for Simply Give donation cards at checkout, or you can do it online. Together, we can provide a helping for those in need. Join Meijer and us in their mission to help feed our hungry neighbors, because whenever you shop Meijer, you help people in your community to work, to play, to live, and certainly to learn. Learn more at MeijerCommunity.com. Meijer is a proud presenting sponsor and fan of the 2026 Michigan football season.
All right, number 4 on our 7 from 77. Staff is set or reset. Roster seems to be set as you can be in college football. It's still 365, it feels like. But during the portal build, John, we discussed some individual players as things happened, as things were made official. So let's go broad here on the cusp of spring ball, seeing it all come together. What did you think of Michigan's portal haul? We'll start on the offensive side of things.
Well, it's unique because there are things that we talked about before the portal even opened, before this coaching staff really got rolling, and we knew who was going to come back. There were certainly things that we thought Michigan was going to need looking at last year's roster moving forward. And what was it? It was wide receiver, some depth on the offensive line, and really depth at the quarterback position, as you saw a couple of guys leaving the portal. So I love the fact that they've really secured some veteran depth behind Bryce Underwood. And whether it's Braden Fowler-Nicolosi, who comes in with great opportunity on the field from Colorado State. He's got as many reps, and I think I saw the stat, he had more reps on the field than any other transfer portal quarterback. So he comes in and gives you some experience behind a young quarterback. And then Colin Hurley is a very talented question mark. Like, what is he going to be? And I thought it was really unique that he was actually 16 years old because he reclassified when he was, when he stepped foot on LSU's campus. And obviously he's had some difficulties there in terms of a car accident and some setbacks, but he was, a 4/5-star quarterback. So you've got more talent. They recruited some more talent in Tommy Carr, and obviously Chase Herbstreit there, Brady Smeagol in the recruitment. But talking about transfers, you got some depth there. And then when, really nothing to add in terms of the running backs, but we knew that was a talented group. However many guys were going to come back, Jordan Marshall back, and Savion Hyder coming in as a freshman. But receiver is really where I thought that this was going to be a team that needed some speed, needed some experience, and you've got it with Jamie French. J.J. Buchanan coming in from Utah, and we're not sure whether he's going to be labeled wide receiver, tight end, but I think it's this is a coaching staff, and I'll talk about it more when we get to defense as well, that has utilized guys with unique skill sets or unique body types, that they've been able to use them in multiple ways, and they don't just pigeonhole a guy. Well, you've got to be a wide receiver, and here's your responsibility. Well, you've got to be a tight end, and here's your responsibilities. I'm very curious as to how they're going to handle J.J. Buchanan. And then when you look at the offensive line so young last year, and all those guys coming back, and it was really a matter of who were they going to get to back up Jake Guarnera at center. So they go to Nebraska and they bring in a guy that has 4 years left of experience here we go. Oh, you know what? I'm just going to call him KT. I made that proclamation last time. Houston KT.
We've got till September.
Yeah. He comes in and he's a young player with a really nice skill set, but we didn't have anybody else. When you think about Evan Link making that move to guard and Nathan Afobe at guard, like those guys didn't snap at all last year. And then, Brady Norton, I know that they were working him into snapping, but he hasn't had any, game reps at that position. And the same thing with Avery Gash. And I know Avery's been working on snapping as well to try, increase his value on that offensive line, but we didn't have anybody that was a quote unquote true center. So if anything happened to Jake, the hell were we going to do? Now they bring in a transfer. So I think they've done a really nice job offensively of bringing in some skill, bringing in some speed, and also bringing in some depth.
All right, number 5 on our 7 from 77. John, how about the defensive side? How would you assess the totality of Michigan's transfer portal haul?
Well, this is where I think you're going to have the biggest impact. Obviously, John Henry Daly coming in as a double-digit sack guy with a couple of years of eligibility, very familiar with most of this coaching staff. Then, the defensive tackles, we've talked about them, but Leia Aya coming in from Utah. Again, this coaching staff, very familiar with him. Nathan Stalling coming in from North Dakota State in the linebacker position. Again, this is a guy that I don't know if he ultimately starts, but he's got a wealth of experience and will provide great depth. And he may end up working himself into a starting role. But he was that North Dakota State transfer, had 75 tackles last year, 3 interceptions. And remember, I compared him in watching him on film and just looking at his numbers and what he did a lot to Cole Sullivan, who we ended up losing in the transfer portal. Smith Snowden at the cornerback position. Again, I don't know that this is a starter that they brought in, but depth at that position is going to be vitally important. And he comes in, again, another Utah transfer. And I think that maybe the most interesting one or two is going to come at the safety position with Chris Bracey coming in from Memphis. And then Taylor Tatum, who was coming in as a running back, but we had heard he's going to switch over to the defensive side. And again, this is where we've got the coaching staff that has taken guys that maybe he's not able to get on the field as a running back because the running back room is stacked right now. But how can we utilize a tremendous athlete? Well, let's move him over to defense and see where he fits in, see how he makes that transition. And I'm just very curious. I mean, he may be a guy that you see on both sides of the ball at times. When we saw that with this coaching staff and Sione Vaki, who's now with the Detroit Lions, who was, a defensive back as long as a running back in college for Coach Whittingham at Utah.
I just wish Michigan had an example of someone who went from offense to defense and starred.
Yeah, I know. If only.
One was in the building in DC with me on Saturday. Mikey Sainer still was on.
Oh, did you get a chance to see him?
I did not. They put him up on the board. I did not get a chance to see Mikey, but Dan Quinn was there, Trey Young, bunch of guys. It was star-studded, man, but Mikey takes the cake.
Yeah, he certainly does. And the fact that, he's only scratching the surface. I know he's going into year 3, but he is a guy that in 2 years at Michigan made some big time plays on the defensive side of things. We all remember those, but as you watch him in his NFL career, every single year he takes big steps forward, and I'm really excited. I'm excited that he's with Washington, but I'm also excited to see him continue his career because he just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah, I think he and the Commanders could have a little bounce back after an injury-riddled 25. All right. Mikey Sainer still obviously did great work in the NFL scouting combine. This year's rendition is this week and into early next week in Indianapolis. The Wolverines receiving 8 invites, 3 on offense, Max Bredesen, Marlon Klein, and Donovan McCulley. Defensively, Jayshon Barham, Rayshawn Benny, Derek Moore, and Jimmy Rolder. And then on special teams, kicker Dom Zavada. So who are you most intrigued to learn about, whether it's in some of the drills or also some of the reports, leaks, commentary around the NFL Combine? Because those are always, you never know what quite to understand. But I know I've used this phrase before, and I've taken it from other podcasts I've listened to. The drumbeat. One report, it doesn't really move me unless it's one of the 4 or 5 really well known. But if you start really hearing the drumbeat, and Mikey was one of those a couple of years ago where I thought he might be able to sneak into late first round. He was an early second rounder. How will you interpret and who are you most interested in hearing stuff about?
Well, I think the highest picks are going to be Derek Moore, Jayshon Barham, and Jimmy Rolder. And I think the one that intrigues me the most, first of all, I'm not sure why kickers are at the Combine because they just kick. And I don't really
not sure why kickers are in football, John. So this doesn't really.
Yeah. So I guess it carries over. Not a big stretch, but Jimmy Rolder, he is, when we talk about guys that are just scratching the surface, he had a tremendous year last year, and he is built like an NFL linebacker. And I think if he gets in the right system, he's really going to explode. And for him, it's just a matter of staying healthy. Through his first couple of years, he just couldn't find a way to stay out of the training room. And then last year, what we saw him do sideline to sideline, downhill, he could take on blockers. So I'm really excited to hear the buzz coming out of the Combine about Jimmy Rolder. What does he run? What are some of the drills times that he has in the drills? All of those different things, because I think he could be a guy that is that really rises up boards. I don't, there's no way that he gets into the first round. And I'm not sure when you're talking about an off the ball linebacker, that he even makes it into the second round. But I think he's going to be a high value pick for anybody that takes him. And if I tell you what, if the Lions move on from Alex Anzalone, which it looks like they will, I think Jimmy Rolder would be a great fit. But the offensive guys, Max is going to have to go to a system that utilizes a fullback style of player. And certainly he can go in there and block and set the edge and be a tight end type of body. But I think he could really find a unique career in the NFL because he's got a rare skill set. There's not a lot of people that do what he does simply because a lot of systems don't utilize a fullback. But he could be a guy that finds a way onto a roster, whether it's a late draft pick or it's an undrafted free agent. But if he gets into the right system, he could be playing a long time.
Doesn't it feel like Bredesen will be a late round flyer for Jim Harbaugh in Los Angeles, or Mike McDonald in Seattle, or now Jesse Minter in Baltimore? It just has that feel to it. We'll see. But I think you have to be around that type of person to really, truly appreciate how they could potentially fit in. And I mean, shoot, Max Bredesen could make an impact that no one watching the game might totally understand until after the fact. The other thing I'll say about Jimmy Rolder, I remember back early in the season, maybe even like just before the season started. And remember, Michigan's linebacker room, the expectations were sky high for that group. And I remember talking with Wink Martindale, and he said, without batting an eye, without any stutter or hesitation, Jimmy Rolder's going to play in the NFL. And this was before this season, where he was, if you look back at what our expectations were in August versus now, not a ton of guys exceeded by several tiers the expectations of the fans. Jimmy Rolder was absolutely one of them. And Wink was thinking it was simply just, can Jimmy have a healthy year? And it started by Jimmy having a healthy offseason. So I think that's an area where, he's not going to be a day one or probably a day two guy, but that could be a productive selection for a team late on day three.
Well, and just think what it allowed this defense to do. And Jayshon Barham, what it allowed him to do, allowed him to play a lot of edge and not have to be an off the ball linebacker. And so I think it helped out Jayshon as an individual, but it certainly helped out this defense because, when you had Ernie, and you had Cole and you had Jimmy Rolder, who had the experience, just hadn't been able to get on the field or stay on the field. That was a loaded linebacker room with a lot of high end talent. And I think all four of those guys, I don't know what Ernie ends up doing with his career if he tries to pick it up at some point, but that was as talented as a group. And we talked about it all season long that you were going to find anywhere.
No doubt. All right, number 7 on our 7 from 77. Our audio guest this week, Koy Detmer Jr. He'll work with the quarterbacks here in Ann Arbor. He was with Kyle Whittingham, Jason Beck and company at Utah last season. And, of course, the son of Koy, the nephew of Ty, both NFL quarterbacks in their day. Your impressions of the conversation and how he and the staff can build out what should be a more comprehensive approach to developing Bryce Underwood and this quarterback room compared to what has come out about what took place last year and in a lot of ways what didn't quite take place enough for that development to really, really grow.
Well, and I think we got to go back and take a little bit from what Coach Beck said as well. Coach Beck is also going to be coaching the quarterback, but he's got a large scope of things to be dealing with in regards to installing the offense, get everything running together. And with such a young individual, and we could talk about Bryce's talent and his upside and all that stuff, but with such a young player, you want to have somebody that has eyes on him, that has a voice with him every single minute, because you've got to, and you'll hear it when you hear the interview in terms of drilling in the technique, the footwork. And when we talked to Coach Beck, like, hey, you're always going to, and I said this, you're always going to default to what your habits are. And it's creating those, championship habits. It's creating all the things, whether it's your footwork, it's your body angle, it's your arm position, your launch angle, all those different things, have to be working right. And they have to be so ingrained that you do them naturally. There's certainly a lot of things that Bryce does at a very high level naturally, but to be able to, take off the rough edges and have, a coach that is there with him in Koy every single moment of every single day, and then have the experience of Coach Beck come in and really help both of them to develop what we think is going to be a very special player here at Michigan.
So transition time on the audio side. Great to visit with Koy Detmer Jr. Here on the video side, we do have some viewers here. We appreciate all those coming out. Concrete Jungle saying Max to the Steelers. Boy, they'd love him in Pittsburgh. That'd be pretty awesome.
Yeah.
Remember the story he told about when he went to support Ben at Ford Field and he got booed by some Lions fans, one of whom was wearing a Michigan national championship hat. But Max was wearing a Mike Allstott jersey.
Right.
I mean, that'd be pretty awesome.
Oh, it'd be, yeah. Is that not the most Bredesen thing to do?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, he doesn't have a Mike Evans jersey, and he doesn't have a Ben Bredesen. He didn't wear one there. I'm sure he had one.
It's too big for him.
Yeah. Say hello to Tommy Snakes. Wet Bandits Home Alone, maybe? I don't know. Patrick F. Excited to see how the linebacker room shakes out, hoping since it seems so wide open that it really pushes these guys to their best. Is that a palpable thing when you have such a wide open grouping like that? I think you can make the argument on the offensive line side as well. I know you're always going to be intrigued by the O-line competition, but this might be as wide open, as fascinating as one as we've seen since we've been doing this podcast.
Yeah, and I mean, so you're looking at, okay, what do we know about this room? And we saw Owusu Boateng get a lot of reps late in the season when guys were banged up and Ernie was out. And so, capitalizing on that and what we saw from him, I think he's a really good talent at that position. What I saw on film from Stalling, coming from North Dakota State. Now, what does that mean in terms of coming from that level? Now, they play really good football at North Dakota State. There's no question about that. But what are they playing against? And that transition, there's going to be a little bit of an adjustment for them. But I think the competition is there. Troy Bowles, we saw him last year. Chase Taylor, we saw him. And one of the transfers that I didn't talk about was the transfer from Michigan State, Aisa Moa. So you've got some talent in that position, and I do think it's deep, and it's going to be very competitive to see who is actually going to be the starting linebackers for this team. And it may simply come down to, when we talked to Jay Hill, it's a complicated defense. Who can pick it up quickest and who can make those communications? Who's going to wear the green dot from the sideline? Who's going to be able to communicate everything to the back end, the front end, keep everything, going in the right direction? That may also be one of the factors involved in the first year of this defense.
You mentioned North Dakota State. We haven't had a chance to talk about this, and I don't bring up every expected FCS to FBS jump, although I am fired up for Sacramento State at Western Michigan action coming up this year. That's
football is so bizarre. Can you imagine the travel for Sacramento State? There is no one on their side of the Mississippi River in that conference.
And the one that was closest is now a member of the Mountain West, Northern Illinois.
Right, which is why they're now in the MAC. It's Northern Illinois to the Mountain West. I could make that connection. That seems doable.
The mountains of DeKalb.
Yeah, well, I mean, at least it's.
I mean, all these names don't make any. The most accurate name in college football, like conference wise, Conference USA, with the second one being the American. And the third being the SEC. That actually is at least somewhat close.
Yeah.
But I do think it's interesting because, I mean, they dominated FCS. There's clearly there's a backing there. It's the only show in town. There is a really unique, passionate fan base up there. And I'm not saying, hey, they're going to turn into some power, but remember back when Boise State they were regularly contending. They were number 2 in the nation, had a chance to legitimately play for the BCS title, not a 14 playoff. Like, they were right there until I think it was Colin Kaepernick in Nevada beat them. That ended their run that year, like 06, 07. This is the first team that's been kind of on the outside, who's had so much sustained success where you kind of wonder, you've been winning all these championships. Isn't that enough? Is it worth trying to go for a bowl game? I'm curious if you think they will ever make any sort of real impact at the FBS level at any point.
I think they certainly can because of all those things that you talked about. Now it's going to be a matter of, as we all know at the FBS level, it's a matter of funding. And them being the only show in town, maybe they're going to be able to put together enough funding to pay a good enough team to be able to compete. And I hate to say it like that. It seems bizarre to put it in those terms, but that's really what it's going to be. And it's a financial strapping to the university itself just to make that jump. So there's going to have to be an influx of cash if they want to remain an impact program.
All right, NFL Combine. Any drills you watch more for, whether it's a Wolverine or somebody else, and any drills you just kind of go, what in God's green earth are they doing here? Why is this happening?
Well, there's always one drill for the offensive line that I watch because it never fails. This happens every single year, and it's when they're asking offensive linemen to pull to the other side of the ball, and a coach will stand. So they'll put a dummy at where the tight end would be, and say it's a left guard or a left tackle, and they're pulling to the right. Well, that coach will stand there as an off the ball linebacker with the football in hand, and as they come around that tight end position, they'll do hey, I want you to go this way or I want you to go that way with the football. And most guys, right, hey, foot in the ground, and they make the cut. There's always somebody that stumbles and just waylays the coach. That's the one that I'm watching for the most. I think that is absolutely hilarious. But in terms of just the drills, I always look at some of the D-line drills. I think they have some of the most interesting drills when they're doing the circle and they pick up the little rag and they're timing them for that, because it really does translate. How deep can you get coming around the edge? And there weren't any really that I just didn't like. I mean, the 40 for an offensive lineman is like, what the hell are we doing? This is stupid. If I'm running 40 yards to try and run down an interception, I'm not going to be the guy that generally catches them. If I am, that guy's probably going to be cut. So there's not a lot of drills that I don't look for or that I hated. The short shuttle, I think, is always interesting one. I think it's closest related to football, about changing direction and acceleration. The 3-cone drill is another one of those, how, kind of showing off your athletic ability. And again, it's a start-stop type of drill. Those are the ones, because the vertical jump, I know everybody looks at, the numbers are whatever they are, and the 40 and the bench press. There's more things that will actually tell you if a player is going to be successful at the next level. And in the end, it's really kind of a coin flip as to whether they're going to be able to make that transition from college to the NFL.
Do you wish the Wonderlic was still around?
Yeah, only because I had to do it. And I think everyone else should just be put through that BS. I mean, it took forever, and the results were,
I thought it was like 12 minutes.
What's that?
I thought it was like a 12-minute test.
Oh no, I think I don't honestly, we're talking about almost 30 years ago now. So my recollection.
We never talk about anything 30 years ago, like the 1997 season.
Yeah. Well, that's only 29. I can still remember that.
Do you remember what you scored? It's out of 50, right? Do you remember what you scored?
Yeah, I think it was a 49.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Sure. Yeah. 49.
I have no idea what I scored. Nor did I care at the time. I tried to do my best, but if you would have said out of 75, I would have told you I got a 74. Little room for improvement.
I like the humble nature of, I can't think I got a 50.
He'll never believe 50, but I'll say 49.
maybe they yeah, I definitely would have just cut. Oh, you know what? Congratulations, John. Valedictorian up there, Clausen, right? Maybe we should do a Wonderlic.
Yeah, I'll put you through it. I've already done it.
No. No one wants to see me do a Wonderlic.
Yeah,
I want to see you do it.
Hey, comments.
We can do it together. We could do a 12, maybe we'll put that later when we're really looking.
Yeah.
Would the chat like to see John and I try to do a 12-minute Wonderlic sometime this offseason? We'll let those who are live. I mean, I don't know. That could be a great idea. It could be terrible. It also will either be a bad score or a terrible score, but we'll find out.
Yeah, well, and we'd also have to have the dump button, because there may be some adjectives that that I would use that may not be appropriate for all ears.
Teamwork would be questionable. There would be some. Yeah, I don't think you're right, John. You're not right, Brian. Oh boy. Corey saying, if what I'm hearing it, that the workouts are going great, this team's physicality will be back. Can you gauge that at this point yet? Obviously, the winter conditioning is important. Some of the stuff they're doing, getting ready for spring ball. When do you feel in an off season like you have a good gauge on a team's physicality and that makeup that you need to have at Michigan and in the Big Ten?
When they put the pads on. And you won't know until then. There's a lot of guys, and there's a lot of bus guys in college football and high school, and hey, they're the first ones off the bus, and you're like, damn, I can't believe I got to play against that guy. And then they get out there, and they look like Tarzan, play like Jane. So, I'm not saying that this is what this is, but I can't tell how big of leap a guy is going to take. He may be putting up great weights in the weight room, but how does that translate to the field? Now, I do like the intensity. I talked about that earlier. And I do like, guys are getting bigger, faster, stronger, but I actually need to see what that looks like when they put the pads on and we've got one-on-one run, one-on-one pass. We've got one-on-one wide receiver against defensive back. They're putting in the work. There's no question about that. Now it needs to translate to the field.
All right. Mentioned Corey here. Tommy saying, let's talk about Rod Moore's return. I obviously positive on and off the field. I don't know how much there is to talk about, because to me, it's just based on where is he at health-wise. And because if he's playing and if he's close to 100% or at 100%, I think he's going to be one of the best defensive players in the Big Ten.
Yeah, and I mean he's got the experience on the field. Now it's been a couple of years, but that was some great experience. And I think one of the great assets that a guy can have when he's hurt is being able to stay involved mentally. And we heard that from every single defensive back last year, that he was basically another coach. And it's one thing to be able to go out there and do it yourself, but you get a better depth of understanding and knowledge when you're actually taking that information and teaching another and coaching another. Now there's little things that you pick up that maybe you didn't fully understand when you were on as a player. Now, all of a sudden, you get that 2 years of experience of him studying the game of football and coaching other guys. And I know we saw him briefly this past season, but if he can be anywhere near where he was a couple of years ago with that knowledge, now all of a sudden, maybe he lost a split second because of the injury, but you can more than make up for that in the processing of what you're seeing and actually reacting to everything that's going on the field.
Live from Clearwater, Florida, Scott Patton saying, "Go Blue, beat Minnesota." So
yeah keep that brown jug.
That's oh man,
not a laughing matter, Brian.
Well, no, they would run out of space. This is Michigan has a chance tonight, John, to get a 100th all-time win over Minnesota in men's basketball. Be the fourth team that Michigan has beaten 100 or more times. Can you name the other three?
Wait a second. I was still caught on the fact that we switched over to basketball.
I'm following the chat,
Yeah, I was talking about the brown jug. We don't have a brown jug.
That is the first road game.
Yeah. All right. So ask me the question again.
So Michigan has beaten Minnesota in men's basketball 99 times coming into play tonight.
Oh, wow.
There are 3 teams that Michigan has beaten more within the Big Ten. Can you name those 3?
Northwestern.
Yes, that's actually the number 1.
Okay. So you got Northwestern, Minnesota tonight. There's one more in between those two.
Two more.
So it's going to have to be somebody that's been in the Big Ten for quite some time. But who's been at the bottom? I want to say Nebraska, but they haven't been in long enough. Let's go with
in that general area. Not Nebraska, but
it can't be Wisconsin. They've had some good teams. In that general area, I'm drawing a blank on Big Ten teams right now. What the hell? It's not Iowa.
It is Iowa.
It is Iowa, really?
Iowa, yep. They're at an even 100. Michigan will get a chance at 101 next week. And who would be the one team in basketball you'd like to have as many wins against as possible?
Well, Michigan State.
That's the other one. 105.
Is it really?
It is. Wisconsin's 5th. So,
wow.
Yeah. Well
I
done.
would not have picked out Michigan State, even though I
You
love
did
that
get a
fact.
49 on the Wonderlic. Just maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. No, not Rutgers, Scott. I have not played them. Though Michigan did, they were undefeated against them until a few years ago. So that is the case. But yeah, Tuesday, no one feels sorry for you in basketball, but if anyone was to feel sorry for a team, it's Minnesota. They've got 6 scholarship players healthy. They are banged up. They play as slow as humanly possible. They're the 3rd slowest team tempo-wise in terms of defensive possessions, 8th slowest overall. Former King Crusader in Detroit, Chancey Willis Jr., one of the many who are out for the season for Minnesota. But yeah, John, you were following along with that game on Saturday against Duke.
Yeah.
Obviously a bummer. Do you have any more or less confidence in Michigan basketball after that game than you did, say, at 6:00 on Saturday night?
Well, obviously I can't say more confidence because they didn't win, but I will say this. There's never a good loss, and don't misconstrue what I'm saying into, oh, that was a good loss, because no, there can be value in losses. And now it's a matter of what did those individuals see and how can they individually get better. Some of that is just coaching themselves, but then it's Dusty May and his staff that have to look and say, okay, well, if we play Duke again and we get a chance to play them in the Final Four, how do we make the results different? How do we match up better? And it could just simply be, hey, we just need to shoot better. And we haven't shot that bad, or we have, we can play better. And it's a matter of, they've got some really good players, and it's not just offensively and making, points, but it's, hey, you can't leave guys open for 3-pointers. They're a team that's a really good shooting team, and it's more than just 1 or 2 guys. So, you see it a lot more than I do in regards to what this team needs to do if they meet Duke again in March Madness. So I'd like to hear from you in regards to what is it that they need to be doing better to match up and actually get a win against Duke.
Yeah, the first thing I'll say, and it was how I led off Defend the Block, if you told me the margin before the game was going to be 5 and didn't tell me the winner, I would tell you, well, the winning team and its fan base strongly believes they're the best team in the country, and the losing fan base would say, yep, we would play better the next time we can get them. This will help us. So that's, I think, the unique aspect of the game just being played in any way, shape, or form. They treated this thing as an NCAA tournament game in terms of the hoopla beforehand, with College Game Day and interviews taking place during both teams' quote shoot-arounds. That was not a normal Michigan shoot-around. That was more of just, hey, we're getting some shots up and hanging out and running through a couple of things. They did their walkthrough at the hotel after the game. That was different. And then the basketballs, they used the NCAA tournament basketball, which neither Michigan nor Duke uses at home games over the course of the regular season. So, and that thing felt as much like an Elite 8 game between 2 big-time fan bases. It was pretty much split down the middle. Great experience. I think for Michigan, rebounding, they just did not have the rebounding success, which was something that I think kind of perplexed Dusty and the staff a month ago, and it seemed like they really turned the corner after the West Coast trip. They were even with Michigan State, who came in as the best rebounding team in the country. They pretty much overwhelmed everybody since the Indiana game after the West Coast trip until that Duke game, except for the first half against UCLA, and it wasn't there. And Duke does not have the, multiple 7-footers or a 7'3" guy like Michigan has in a Daimara, but they had length among every player on the team. They were starting 6'5" or taller. I think Michigan's guards experienced something very, very different, and Michigan got in some foul trouble. Now, I will say two things. Yes, were there a few calls in that game that I was questioned? Yes. If you were listening to me on Saturday, I expressed my thoughts on that. I tried to do so respectfully, but yeah, there were a few that were confusing. I don't think that was the reason that Michigan won or lost the game. I also want to make sure people understand, in the NCAA tournament, they call this stuff tight.
Yeah.
For me, more than anything else, I think it's probably good that Michigan had to experiment a little bit with their rotations and with dealing with significant foul issues. I also think that, Michigan might reanalyze how they handle Adai and Morez if they pick up 2 fouls again. Not to say that they won't bring in one of those guys again with 2 fouls. I think they might actually look at it and say, we might need Rez with 2 fouls a little bit more. It might not be the reaction people expect of, well, you just can't bring Adai back in with 2 fouls. You don't let him play the rest of the first half. I don't know. That's me guessing. That's a slightly educated guess. But they're going to have to think through because, Adai didn't foul out in the game. You don't know if he would have, and he played more.
Right.
You have to auto bench him at 3. Like that's a must. You can't roll the dice on a 4. We saw that with Eric Musselman and USC at our place in early January. But yeah, I think Michigan got a lot of experience. You're right, John. That locker room, they were mad. They were upset because they felt like they missed an opportunity. And there is value of being the number 1 overall seed. That does have. It's not make or break by any stretch, but there is value to be the number 1 overall seed. But yeah, I still think this team is a favorite to make the Final Four. They should be on the short list to win a national championship. And yeah, I do think there'll be a motivational factor hoping that it's Michigan and Duke again. Because if it's Michigan and Duke again, it's on a Monday night in Indianapolis. I don't expect Duke or Michigan to be at the 4th 1 seed or a 2 seed. I expect that to be, if they play it again, it's for everything.
Yeah, I think so as well. And, when you're talking about Adai Mara and the foul trouble that he got in, it's interesting that you brought up that, they may have to handle that a little bit differently. Because, and there was a play, I think it was in about the first 5 minutes of the game. You saw his impact and the fact that they threw him one of those alley-oops. It wasn't perfect and he was kind of turned around, but his body control for such a big guy is really something unique to be able to catch that ball. He didn't slam it. It just, it was right, soft off the backboard. That to me was a special play. And everybody's probably looking at it going, it's just a big guy making a big play. No, that was the body control for that size of a human being was something unique. And they missed it when he wasn't in there. And that he's not going to, even up the rebounding just by himself. But I thought that was a huge part of him not being in there as much was losing on the boards.
Yeah. Well, I'll say this, maybe the biggest play that Adai had was on Michigan's, I think, 7-0 run to cut it to 1 after Duke had a game-high 8-point lead. He went 2 of 2 at the free throw line.
Yeah.
That's not common for him, and Dusty has maintained, Adai has maintained, it's just a confidence thing. His form looked better. He looked confident. Those were absolutely massive. The other aspect is Michigan's offense is at its best when he's on the floor. What he opens up, how he passes the basketball, how he can offensive rebound, how he is I think he's a really smart offensive player. He's getting there defensively, and some of the fouls are ones he'd like to have back. You look at the first half, the first foul was a mistake. The second foul probably wasn't a foul. The third foul, he got his money's worth.
Yeah.
So that's still 2 fouls at the 7-minute mark. That's still not advantageous. How about
I'm curious.
Yeah, go ahead. I just want to say
this is another aspect of the game.
Yep, go ahead.
In regards to LJ Kason, I thought he would have played more. Was there did Dusty ever allude to why he only got 14 minutes in that game?
Yeah, it's interesting. I do want to point out, Corey, with a hot take, I wouldn't be surprised if Duke doesn't make it that far. I think they'll be in the Final Four. Yeah, from there, who knows, right?
Yeah,
but that's I think we'll see. That's what makes the tournament so unique. LJ played really well in the first half, and I do think that Michigan as a whole may have gotten a little bit away from what they've utilized from a rotation standpoint in the second half, because Will Cheddar didn't play the entire second half. Now, that might be more matchup based.
Yeah.
Will just didn't quite match up great against that Duke roster. But LJ played well in the first half. Elliott was struggling a little bit. We didn't see a ton of Roddy Gale after he started the second half because of the 3 fouls for Adai. Basically, once they got Adai back out there with 3 fouls, I think at the under 16 media timeout, they said, we're going with the big 3, Elliott, and mostly Trey McKinney. That to me is the trust that they have in Trey as a freshman. He didn't have his best performance. I thought defensively he was pretty good until he wasn't. He had a couple of missed assignments down the stretch. But yeah, I'll be curious how they handle if things go the way they should tonight, then we're not going to learn a whole lot. But if it's a 2-point game with 13 minutes to play at Illinois on Friday, I mean, Yaks played all but a minute 30 or something like that in that game. They want to use Yaks and Merez pretty much the entire way. I think pretty much everybody else on the roster is open to be shuffling and who's the hot hand and who's out there. I'll be really curious how they go with that moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a hell of a year to this point, and I don't think that loss takes away anything. It was a missed opportunity, but there's way more opportunity in front of them, whether it's the Big Ten tournament, obviously the prospects of being a team, one of the very few that are going to be favored to win a national championship.
That's the expectation. Cut from a different cloth, the Michigan guards were off, and Duke did a good job of getting Meijer in foul trouble. Yeah, there was some holding. Again, the second foul was not a foul in my estimation. There also was a sequence where Cam Boozer was the only person on the floor who didn't think a foul took place. That was bizarre.
Yeah.
But hey, again, Michigan lost the game, and they're going to have to learn from it. As he said, they'll learn from this, and they'll be all right. Someone took my YouTube handle, MGoBlue Brian. It's a bad day to be a Gopher. Indeed. We'll look forward to that one here tonight. 8:30. Terry and I have the call starting at 8 o'clock. Check us out, Varsity Network app or Michigan Athletics app, 94.7 or 102.9 locally. And we'll see what happens. We'll have Zach Novak on the stream here tonight for us, scheduled for Justin Joyner, Michigan assistant as well. If you want to talk some Michigan hoops late night, probably about 11:30, as long as Michigan does what it's supposed to do and clinch at least a share of a Big Ten championship. But as we mentioned, John,
no one likes to share.
No sharing. And they got a chance to win it at Rez's old place coming up on Friday. I know a place that's important in the Jansen household, but there'll be a big one Friday night. Any final thoughts before we get out of here?
No, I'm just, I tell you what, I'm excited to be able to talk to these coaches. I'm learning as much and hopefully sharing as much as I possibly get a chance to know with our listeners. And we have it in the works at some point, whether it's just before spring ball or just after spring ball, to get Coach Whittingham, which I know is a lot of people are going to be excited to hear from him on the podcast. So stay tuned. A lot of really good stuff coming right down the pipe.
No doubt. As you see on the bottom of the screen, new quarterbacks coach Koy Detmer Jr., our guest on the audio version. I'll talk to you tonight after a Michigan victory over Minnesota. John and I will be back next week. Thanks to all those who joined us yet again here on Michigan Athletics YouTube stream.